Krishna here tells us exactly what is divine love. And you perhaps have gathered by now that our topic this morning is love. Love, human and divine. And yes, Valentine's Day is this week. In the United States, people are learning now what happens when only 49% of the people bother to vote. Democracy and freedom from tyranny are precious and fragile. And they're a privilege that we need to work hard to maintain. And instead, if democracy is taken for granted, it can so easily slip away. The same is true for love. It's fragile, it's precious, we can't take it for granted. We all know the examples of taking it for granted. The husband who has convinced himself that it's his wife's duty to just put up with him. And the wayward son who thinks, I can get into trouble because my parents will always rescue me. Until that love turns into tough love. And the story where Yogananda tells of his mother, who in essence says to her husband one day, you've criticized me one time too many. I'm going back to stay with my mother until you've learned how to respect me more. Or that wayward kid gets arrested, and his parents decide, well, let's just see how he likes a few days in jail. Maybe he'll begin to learn the consequences of his actions. If we abuse the love that others give us, and if we take it for granted, it can very easily slip away. That love needs to be cultivated and nurtured just like a new baby plant needs that watering and constant attention. And that relationships of love can get stale. Our devotion for God can get stale. They need to be refreshed. They need to be energized. A friend of mine years ago, her name was Paula, and she died of cancer. And as she was doing so, she wanted to leave her body just as free as she could. And in her last days, she wanted to do everything she could to work out any past karma that she had. And so from her hospital bed, she started making phone calls. And she started calling, she called her friends, all of her family members, and even people who had an uncomfortable relationship with her. Her ex-husband, work associates who, the condition was not always comfortable with them. And she said to each of these people how much she valued them, how much she was grateful, what she learned from them. And she would say things like, oh, we had such a good time together when we did that. And wasn't it so funny when that happened? And she'd say, and by the way, if I hurt you doing this in any way, I forgive you. And, don't worry about that other thing that happened. If you ever thought that you hurt me, I forgive you. And I ask also your forgiveness when this other thing happened. She was acting as well as she could as a channel of that divine love. A love that forgives, a love that accepts, that unites, that blesses. And we may not have such an opportunity in our lives, but we don't have to wait until our deathbed. We can do exactly the same thing now. And which is not to say that we should dredge up every past wrong that we can think of that we committed or others may have committed towards us. Not at all. As Sri Yukteswar said, forget the past. The past lives of all men are full of many shames. Do the right thing now. Make the right spiritual effort now, and everything in the future will improve. Our focus is here and now. Our sadhana, seva, devotion, improving our attitude, seeing God in everything. As Krishna said, just a little practice will free one from dire fears and colossal suffering. And 1/2 minute of Kriya practice is equal to 1 year of natural spiritual evolution. But what if today, now, against our will, some uncomfortable feeling comes to us? Some disharmony. We regret something, we feel hurt feelings, there was a misunderstanding. We need to give that present feeling a present response. And forgiveness is a big key. If we can forgive, then we clear the deck, so to speak. We free ourselves to be able to let go of any fear we might have of what might happen in the future. And then we're able to love divinely. We're able to love without attachment. When Jesus was killed, he was beaten and tortured, left to die, hanging on a post. His response, he prayed to God and he said, "Forgive these men who did this. They know not what they do. They made a mistake out of ignorance. They deserve to be forgiven." And what if something is just too painful to us? We feel like we just don't have the power to forgive. Then we need to do as Jesus did. We need to ask God to forgive that person. And we need to pray for that person's well-being. And when we try our best to be a channel for this unconditional, universal, divine love, we begin, as Krishna said, to see God everywhere. And then, and only then, can He abide in me, and I will abide in Him. Thank you.
Yes, Valentine's Day is on Tuesday, and so that's one of the reasons why we chose the topic this morning. And when we think of Valentine's, we think of relationships, and I wanted to mention that this is a wonderful book, In Divine Friendship. Speaking of relationships, that's the best kind of relationship we can have, is a relationship of souls, of divine friendship. And my inspiration for this morning's talk is straight from this book. Such a beautiful book. If you don't have it, I recommend it. And when we think of relationships, we think, oh, I want a relationship. Maybe when we were younger, we would think, I want a relationship. I want a romantic relationship. I want to develop a relationship. And then once we're, already in relationship, I need to work on my relationship. And, I need to reaffirm my relationship. And it's always like us and another. And as long as that relationship stays outside of ourselves, it can never be perfect. It can never be divine. And Swamiji was writing about relationships in there and just say, we already exist in relationship. Let's not think of just one other like a spouse. But just think of our children, our parents, think of our family, think of our friends, think of all the people in this city, think of all souls everywhere, think of our relationship with animals, think of our relationship with the trees, with everything in the universe. We know that we are part of all that is. So our relationship is with everything already. And our relationship with God, is eternal. It has always been there. And that's not something that we have to work on. It's something that we can know on deeper and deeper levels within ourselves, that relationship. Just think of the saints that go into ecstasy just thinking of their love for God, just thinking of God's love for them. Think of Ramakrishna. He would just contemplate Divine Mother and he would go into ecstasy. So, and being a part of all that is, there was a poem that poet that Swamiji quotes, and it's that I move my finger in the least little way and it affects the most distant star. That's how intricately we are a part of all that is. But then when it comes right down to we say, well, I need to be practical. Let's talk about practical things in relationships. So we can talk about human relationships, but look at human relationships as a way to help us grow in understanding and help us transform, make a transformation within ourselves. If there's an argument of some kind or something is upsetting to us, look deep inside. What is it that I allow to upset me so? And if so, how can I change on that? How can I work on myself? So we can use relationships as a self-exploration, as a way to develop. And we can use them as a way, as Keshava said, to show divine love for others, because really it's through relationships that we learn most how to give to others. It's not so easy being a sadhu in a cave somewhere to learn how to give to others. It's very easy to find peace if you're just sitting in a cave. It's often, I like to think so. But it's more difficult in a marriage, in a household, in a family, where there's so many dynamics going on. So we can learn through our relationships, how can I be more self-giving instead of in these relationships, what do I want? How can I think about giving joy to others rather than just be concerned about my own happiness? And we think about our children. We have so many demands on them. Or our parents. We have so many demands on them. But this relationship should be in inner freedom. Our children came through us, but they are not ours. Each of their souls has their own destiny. We can't control their destiny. So we need to be in relationships with all of those around us with a sense of inner freedom and not demanding anything from them. And relationships should all be soul friendships. Friendships of the soul. Souls are eternal. This friendship is eternal. We know that all of us here in spiritual family, our relationship with the Guru is eternal. Therefore, our relationship as Guru Vais is also eternal. And that unconditional love, which is impossible unless we're loving with God's love. I think of Swami Kriyananda's divine friendship with me and so many others, thousands of others. But he would always as recognizing my soul, see the highest in me. Always know that I could achieve and reach a state higher than I felt that even I could achieve or that I could ever reach. And I could feel that from him, and I would always aspire to be the best I could be around him, because he was always emitting that vibration of higher level of consciousness to me, saying, you can, and he didn't even say it out loud, but just being around him, I could feel myself wanting to be the best I could be. And, I was very, very, very selfish. And even when I got to Ananda, I was still very, very selfish. I was working on myself, and I was trying to look at my emotions and why I would react, and trying to have self-inquiry. And so slowly that happened. But then through Ananda, through these teachings, through Swamiji's encouragement, I started serving a little, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And all that self-occupation that used to sort of keep me in duality. Sometimes I'd be happy, sometimes I'd be depressed, sometimes I'd be up, sometimes I'd be down. But when we're serving and thinking of others and giving to others and helping them find joy, suddenly we're filled with joy ourselves. And so Swami gave me that, and he gave that to thousands of others. I can just imagine how many people's lives he's changed. And so also think about Master, his love for us. He came, God's boatman, that poem, I will come again and again, 1 trillion times if need be. I mean, what do the gurus? They're already liberated. They incarnate here to just say, here, this is how to love divinely. If you love each other divinely and live with God's love flowing through you, you will finally understand what true love is. And so the Swami Kriyananda and some other devotees came to India in the late 50s, and they were with Anandamoy Ma. And so they had spent some time with Anandamoy Ma, gone back to America, and Swami came back again to India and saw Anandamoy Ma again and said, Ma, back in the ashram, we all talk about you, we all love you so much. And Ma said, God's love is the only love. God's love is the only love. And when we think about that, we think, no, but that's not true in my case. I have this other special love going on, and I have a special love within my family. But that love has to pass away. Whether that person will leave their body, whether some argument may happen, children may leave the home, different things happen, but on this world stage, all of the other loves will pass away. There is only one love, and that love, God's love, is what we have to find within us. We have to nurture that relationship with us. We have to dive deep inside and have that inner relationship, understand what our love for God is. He is ours and we are His. And we have to understand that on a very deep level and let that love flow through to every one of our relationships. Every person that's in our life, we need to say, this is God's love coming to me. How is God's love coming to me through you today? Through you today, through my daughter, through my husband, through my family, through my friends, through my work colleagues. How is God going to come to me today? And how can I come to them? Everything I do with them, we had a big influence of people right now. How can I hold them in the highest light? How can I see the very highest in every soul in my life and help them aspire to the highest in them? That's divine love flowing through us. And that's what we need to cultivate. Swamiji said, in the end, our lives, really the only thing that matters is God's love for us. And the only true thing that we can do in our lives, all these life after life, is to love God. Because in the end, everything is a reflection of that. And I just heard the quote from Swamiji's song that we listened to. I know now that love was mine all the while. I listened and love was there. Let's have an arati now.